I would hang out and watch him throw parties. I went to Philly, followed him all the way to Philly, and he said, yo, Playboy, this party costs $1.5 million. I'm like, you are out of your mind. And I said, Puff, I'll throw you a party for $400. That will rival this party. And he got pissed at me. He said, yo, don't play with me. I said, no, I'm not. I respect you. But in LA, I'm known for throwing like these cool little parties. So he called like Saturday morning, yo, Playboy, I'm in town, make it happen. I said, cool. So I went into my little phones, called about 200 of the coolest people. Puff showed up with, SUVs and FBI. It was just, it was crazy. And, because it was Puff was always sort of dangerous. And he looked, he said, oh, that's the girl on that show, and that's the guy on that show. And I said, yeah, we're all friends. We all hang out. He said, oh, man. And I said, yeah, but Puff, look over there on the dinner table. I got Kentucky Fried Chicken. I put it in a nice plate. I said, I got Coca-Cola. I put it in a pitcher. We're at $208, and we are killing it right now.
The year 2004 marked a major turning point in Jamie Foxx's career. His portrayal of Ray Charles in the biopic Ray not only earned him a prestigious Oscar, but also made him one of the most sought-after faces in Hollywood. Around the same time, Jamie was introduced to an exclusive inner circle, a place where fame, power, and money blended into a dangerous cocktail. And leading that circle was none other than Sean "Diddy" Combs. At that point, Diddy wasn't just a music mogul, he was a living icon. He embodied extravagance. The kind of man who could call in a private jet just to bring champagne from France, or freeze an entire hotel for a private party. When Jamie stepped into that world, he thought he had finally made it to the top. He once joked about Diddy during a stand-up bit. I call him Black Gatsby. Everybody was there, from the mayor to the megastars. It wasn't just a party, it was the ultimate power performance. The two quickly became close friends. They were seen together at elite parties, high-profile entertainment events, even in behind-the-scenes clips that most fans could only dream of watching. Diddy treated Jamie like a little brother. Jamie, in turn, saw Diddy as a guide, someone who had opened the door to the real Hollywood. But few people knew that what started with champagne and laughter would later spiral into a nightmare that dragged on for nearly 2 decades. In the beginning, their relationship was celebrated as a symbol of brotherhood within the black entertainment community. Two powerful, talented men shaping pop culture in the 2000s. But over time, behind the glamour, Jamie started to feel that something wasn't quite right. There were parties where he felt like an outsider, even while standing shoulder to shoulder with the biggest names in the industry. There were moments when the laughter seemed drowned out by secretive glances and hushed conversations behind closed doors. And while Jamie once joked that he could throw a better party for just $400 in LA, the truth was, during those years, he had fallen deep into a world that not everyone could escape. A world where friendships could be forged with a handshake and destroyed with a single nod from the man in charge. In April 2023, the world was shaken when Jamie Foxx was suddenly hospitalized in critical condition. There was no official statement from his family, no updates from doctors, only a long, unsettling silence that gave rise to a storm of speculation. Fans were confused. The media was in a frenzy. Conspiracy theories flooded social media, ranging from Jamie suffering a stroke due to exhaustion, to claims he was poisoned at an elite party. But the most chilling theory of all? That Jamie had narrowly survived an attempted assassination, allegedly at the hands of his old friend, Diddy. At first, nobody could believe it. Jamie and Diddy had been like brothers for nearly 20 years. But then, during a federal court case in New York, an unexpected witness claimed that it was Diddy who had made the move. Not with a knife, but with a poisoned drink served at a private event. According to the testimony, Jamie later quietly contacted the FBI, shared what he knew, and became a key witness in a covert investigation that lasted for months. When Jamie recovered and reappeared at a public event, he dropped a cryptic line, "I almost died. There are people who didn't want me to survive to tell my story." What made things even stranger was the wave of rumors that had swirled during his absence. Claims that Jamie had died, or worse, been replaced by a clone. Videos analyzing his facial expressions and eye movements surfaced on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. People compared new clips to old appearances, scrutinizing wrinkles to argue, that's not the real Jamie anymore. Trying to put the rumors to rest, Jamie joked during his Netflix special what had happened was, saying, "I'm not a clone, man. I'm alive thanks to God and a few amazing people." But somehow, the joke only added fuel to the fire. leaving many convinced that something truly serious had happened, and Jamie just wasn't ready to speak about it yet. What made things even more suspicious was Diddy's reaction, or rather, the lack of one. No public well wishes, no encouraging words. And this, from a man who used to be by Jamie's side at every major event. Was Diddy staying silent out of guilt? Or did he know that Jamie was no longer an ally, but someone who could bring down his entire empire with one testimony? If Jamie really was poisoned, then who did it, and why? Was it because he knew too much? Or because he refused to stay silent? Whatever the truth may be, one thing was clear. From the moment Jamie was hospitalized, their friendship was over. In its place stood a quiet war, between the man who held the secrets, and the one still clinging to ultimate power. Jamie Foxx was once the life of Hollywood's most lavish parties. But what he didn't expect was that those neon-lit nights of music, booze, and glamour would serve as the gateway into a cold, calculating underworld of manipulation. In court, Jamie didn't just recount what he saw, he also confessed to what he had ignored. He described Diddy's parties as covert control councils, where everyone had a purpose and a role, either as a resource, a tool, or a target. From the outside, they were events the magazines dubbed cultural landmarks, featuring top artists, designers, billionaires, even politicians. But on the inside, Jamie said, silence was more valuable than any black card. It was a place where you'd be offered opportunities, lead roles, multi-million-dollar deals, in exchange for one thing: never speaking about what you saw behind those closed doors. The photos would never be posted, the videos would never be shared, but someone was always recording, storing them like cards in the hands of whoever controlled the game. He spoke about private parties reserved for an elite few, where phones were confiscated, servers were actually undercover bodyguards, and everything was under surveillance. Some people walked out of there with blockbuster movie deals. Others were never seen on screen again. And, of course, no one ever asked questions. Jamie once called it the moral gray zone, where light and darkness danced together, and no one dared to walk away. One time, Jamie tried to leave a party when he saw an underage girl being led into a private room. But one of the organizers gently placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered, "Don't be a hero. You'll lose that upcoming Marvel role." Jamie recounted this memory like an open wound, a moment when he chose silence out of fear, ambition, and the overwhelming influence of the people behind it all. Some anonymous sources even claimed that at these exclusive parties, Diddy would often invite fresh blood, rising young artists, to undergo a twisted kind of initiation. Sometimes it was sexual. Sometimes it was about testing loyalty. Other times it was just pure humiliation. Those who refused were blacklisted. Those who complied were rewarded with opportunities, and stripped of their freedom. Jamie described one such event as hell disguised as heaven. The entryway shimmered with lights, classy jazz music, overflowing champagne. But the deeper you walked in, the colder it got, and Jamie said he felt something invisible tightening around his throat. That's when he began to wonder, is this really where I belong? On the stand, he didn't name others who had attended. But even without specifics, what he shared was enough to send chills down the public spine. Diddy's world wasn't just a network of parties and celebrity friendships. It was a sophisticated, layered system where the weak were crushed and the strong learned to close their eyes. To the public, Jamie Foxx's court testimony landed like a bomb in the middle of Hollywood. But to those who had brushed up against that realm of power, it wasn't shocking. It was their worst fears come true. Jamie wasn't just a witness. He had lived that life. He had been celebrated, elevated, front row at the finest events. His decision to speak out wasn't revenge from a fallen friend. It was a reckoning from someone who had gone too deep and finally chose to turn around. Jamie's words in court weren't rage-filled outbursts. They were sharp, deliberate, and each one cut through the carefully polished image Diddy had spent years crafting. I know a lot of people will call me a traitor, but if I keep silent, I become an accomplice. That line landed like both confession and liberation. Jamie didn't deny that he had benefited from the system. He admitted to turning a blind eye, to choosing silence to protect his career, his image. He had once been the embodiment of the American dream, a black artist who rose from poverty to the pinnacle of fame. But at the top, he said, was the deepest abyss. And for years, He had been standing right at the edge without even realizing it. Many fans asked, why now? Why speak out after nearly 2 decades of friendship? Some said it was because he nearly died. Others believed that after his health scare, he re-evaluated his life and realized what he had lost. A few critics accused Jamie of using the moment to draw attention or hide his own secrets. But most people felt that his testimony didn't come off as a stunt. It felt like a confession, an attempt to make amends, both with himself and with those hurt by the system. What stood out most was Jamie's refusal to lash out. He didn't call for revenge. He didn't name names. He didn't threaten to leak confidential documents. He didn't moralize. Instead, he calmly, painfully recounted what he had seen, endured, and ignored. And maybe that calmness is what made his words so haunting. He didn't have to shout. A whisper was enough to make the whole industry hold its breath. In many ways, Jamie resembled an anti-hero, someone who had strayed, but returned to warn others. He didn't plead for forgiveness. He didn't try to justify the past. All he wanted was for the truth to be heard, even if it meant tearing down everything he had built. And maybe, in a world where silence is survival, that's the bravest thing a man can do. Jamie didn't cast blame. He didn't paint himself as a saint fighting evil. He simply told his story, and let the public decide whether he was a betrayer or the only one clear-headed enough to tear down the web of lies that had wrapped around Hollywood for the past 2 decades. Unlike the red carpets where camera flashes never stop and fans' cheers echo endlessly, the federal courtroom in New York, where Jamie Foxx and Sean Diddy Combs faced off, was silent to the point of being unnerving. There was no stage, no sound effects, just cold chairs, closed doors, and a dense atmosphere that seemed to press down on every breath. But it was there, in that sterile room, that one of the most unforgettable moments in Hollywood history unfolded. The moment when the entertainment king had to sit in the defendant's chair, facing the man he once called his brother. Jamie walked into the courtroom in a simple gray suit. His eyes no longer sparkled with the energy of an Oscar-winning actor, but held the quiet intensity of a man determined to tell the truth. His footsteps echoed in the stillness, each one sounding like a silent declaration of war. Diddy sat across the room, silent but not weak. His eyes, usually full of charisma and power, now burned with something else. Coldness, ferocity, and possibly rage. No one could have imagined this scene. These were 2 men who had once shared stages, laughed in behind-the-scenes clips, bonded through years of fame and fortune, and now they looked at each other like enemies on a battlefield. Outside the courtroom, hundreds of journalists, fans, and former high society allies waited, holding their breath. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew. If Jamie won this case, it could trigger the collapse of an entire system. The charges against Diddy were no longer whispers or backstage gossip. These were serious criminal allegations: human trafficking, extortion, sexual abuse, and the use of financial influence to manipulate vulnerable individuals in the entertainment industry. All of it laid out in documents, testimony, and evidence. But what shocked the public even more was the star witness, Jamie Foxx, the man once closest to Diddy, now possibly delivering the final blow. Jamie's presence in court wasn't just an act of defiance. It sent a message: no one is untouchable. In an industry that had silenced countless small voices while protecting those who knew how to play the game, Jamie stepping forward was like ringing an alarm bell. People saw in him a man awakened, a spiritual escapee smashing the golden cage that had once held him so comfortably. The media called it a historic trial. But those within the entertainment world knew it was something else. A changing of the guard. An end to an era where powerful music and movie moguls could hide anything behind NDAs and wads of cash. And whether Diddy was convicted or not, the image of him sitting silently in court, accused by someone he once treated like family, was enough to shift the way Hollywood views power and the cost of abusing it. As Jamie Foxx stood at the witness stand, describing what he had seen behind the velvet ropes of the elite world he once called home, many began connecting the dots to other quiet scandals that had been simmering beneath the surface of the entertainment industry in recent years. And shockingly, Jamie's testimony didn't stand alone. It seemed like the final puzzle piece in a disturbing image, one where culture moguls didn't just control careers, but the very identities and bodies of the artists they managed. One of the most eerie connections pointed out by media outlets and analysts was the Balenciaga scandal the year before. a global luxury brand exposed for incorporating disturbing, child-exploitative imagery in its ad campaigns. The fashion world was rocked. But what unsettled people even more was the near-universal silence from the art and entertainment elite. Why did so many who had once been vocal about equality and social justice suddenly look the other way? Why did artists who had worked closely with Balenciaga, many of whom were regulars at Diddy's parties, not say a single word? That question went unanswered until Jamie began describing the rituals of silence he'd witnessed at multimillion-dollar parties he used to attend. According to Jamie, the silence wasn't about avoiding scandal. It was about survival. Speaking out meant career suicide. Just like Diddy had kept control over many artists, not through talent or money, but through secrets. Private videos. Contracts signed under the influence. Incidents that could never see daylight. More and more people started referring to Diddy as part of the cultural control system. A system that had no official name, but everyone knew existed. From Grammy after-parties to charity galas, an underground network operated quietly but efficiently, rewarding obedience, punishing defiance. Even pop culture analysts began tying Jamie's testimony to the previously mocked but now eerily prescient rants of Kanye West, who once claimed the industry was being manipulated by secret societies, and that Hollywood is a giant mental prison. Back then, Kanye was dismissed as crazy. But after Jamie's revelations, people began asking, was Kanye truly insane, or just too early to say what Jamie is finally saying now? Most of the audience still isn't quite ready to accept the possibility that what we call the entertainment industry might not just be a place where joy is made, but also a massive tool of control, powered by an invisible network of influence. And if Jamie Foxx, someone once considered an insider, someone who climbed every rung of the fame and fortune ladder, has now come forward to expose the empire, then maybe what he's saying shouldn't be taken as mere accusations, but as a roadmap. A way for the public to begin asking, what exactly are we celebrating? When someone like Jamie Foxx steps into the light and dares to tell the truth, one thing becomes certain: others will follow. Because in any power structure, especially in the showbiz world, where power thrives on image and silence, the moment one person breaks the rules, the dominoes start falling. After the first court hearing, the international media began naming celebrities who had once been close to both Jamie and Diddy. Usher, for instance, who had been mentored by Diddy in the early stages of his career and once lived in Diddy's home at the age of 13, suddenly found himself at the center of the storm. Old backstage footage and interview clips were being dug up. One seemingly harmless clip from a 2004 episode of The Howard Stern Show, in which Diddy vaguely hinted that Usher knows exactly what happened at my parties, was suddenly recast as a chilling clue. Usher has remained silent. But that very silence is feeding the speculation. Some popular entertainment bloggers have even predicted that if Jamie is the first explosive, Usher could be the next one to take the stand, or be forced to testify. And it doesn't stop there. Pharrell Williams, Kanye West, Justin Bieber, and even female figures like Cassie, who publicly filed a lawsuit against Diddy in 2023 but withdrew it quietly just days later, have all been dragged into the conversation. Of course, there's no concrete evidence linking all of them directly to these events. But when public suspicion takes hold, evidence isn't always required. People just need a motive. And in a world where stars rise to insane levels of success at unbelievably young ages, audiences often assume there must be a hand behind it. Cultural analysts have already started calling this a new wave of #MeToo. But this time, it's not targeting a single person. It's aimed at an entire system of hidden power that has been operating silently for decades. A system protected by stage lights, $100 million contracts, and rehearsed thank you speeches at award shows. And the biggest question now is, who's brave enough to step forward next? According to some insider sources in Hollywood, at least 3 individuals are currently preparing to testify, but are waiting until they have legal counsel and full protection before stepping into the spotlight. It's not that they don't want to speak. It's that they know better than anyone else. Once you go public, your career can end overnight. Jamie once said in a backstage interview, "I don't need anyone to believe me. I just need them to know that I used to stay silent. And I don't want to be silent anymore." That simple, haunting statement has become the spark lighting a fire under the long-standing silence in showbiz. Because when one person stands up, others don't feel so alone anymore. The question is no longer, who will speak up? The real question now is, are we ready to hear the truth when they do?